Hello, everyone, and welcome to How to Protect Performance and CX During Demand Spikes, brought to you by the awesome Elephants Don't Forget. My name's Martin Teasdale. I'm the host and founder of Get Out a Rap and the team leader community. I will be taking you through this. We have an amazing panel for you. We also get the irony that we are doing this during a time that you may be dealing with a demand spike. So thank you very much for joining. You are going to learn something that will make your next demand spike far easier to deal with. In fact, you will not just survive, you will thrive. Let's do a little bit of housekeeping before I bring in our awesome panelists. We'd like to hear from you too. We're going to get you to work today, but why not in the chat? Drop your name in there, say where you work. It's also a chance to network with everyone that's watching. Please do participate. We have a couple of polls coming up, and that would be great to get your input. There will, of course, be a recording. So anyone that's registered, you will get a recording of this webinar. And please do subscribe to Elephants. Don't forget updates and thought leadership. They do produce some really interesting stuff, which is a nice addition to your inbox. So without further ado, let me bring in our panelists and let them introduce themselves. I'm going to start with you, Caspian, please.
Thank you very much, Martin. So, hi everyone. My name is Caspian Rospigliosi. I work for Bupa Global. We're a market-leading IPMI company. My role is head of relationship management and operational service delivery, where I look after a number of functions, both directly interacting with our customers and supporting the effective utilization of our resource and our people to deliver really good outcomes. And it's great to be here today on this call. I've got a lot of experience working with elephants, don't forget. And hopefully, others of you will take things away from this interaction, but also a wider sort of picture of what elephants don't forget do, and also some things that you can utilize in your contact centers should you work in one.
Oh, that's great. And it's we've had a few chats, and I know, not putting you under any pressure or anything, but I know we're going to hear loads and loads of great stuff from Caspian and Ben.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Good morning, everybody. So, I'm Ben Scales. I head up our sales team here at Elephants Don't Forget. So, I've got the pleasure of speaking to lots and lots of organisations and customers and prospective new customers around perhaps some of the operational challenges that they face in contact centres. The increase in demand into them is definitely one that we hear about a lot, and we look at how can we support people in their role to perform the best that they can, and really use knowledge and competence as two key enablers to make sure that they are confident in their job, happy, and performing really well. So thank you, Martin. I think it's going to be a really interesting discussion today, and thank you to everybody who's taking time out to attend.
Yes, indeed. And let's hear from you all watching. I can see quite a few of you there already. Why not drop into the chat who you are, who you work for, and what you do? We are going to not try, there is no try, as Yoda said. We are going to answer these questions or discuss these points. What causes mistakes and rework to spike when volumes surge? How can leaders protect both performance and people under pressure? What does resilience look like in a modern high volume contact center? How can continual learning and multi skilling help teams stay sharp and flexible? And what practical steps can we take now to prepare for the next peak? So we have a lot to get through. So, why are we here? Now, I think we could all agree that demand spikes aren't seasonal anymore. They are structural. We've all been there. We've all had a lot of experience in operations and seen exactly what happens when the pressure hits. Some of the reasons for that: customer urgency and speed, failure, demand, complexity shift, market volatility. When you look at this slide, Caspian, what kind of jumps out at you?
I think that there's just points that make everyone's lives more challenging when we look at the increasing customer urgency. We know how the complexity of work has also increased over the last few years, in particular in contact centres, with an increase in customers self-serving, that when a customer is reaching out to a contact center or reaching out to your business, it's likely they've already tried something. And so actually already on the back foot, they may have tried to find a solution, and they're coming to you with more complicated things, or coming to you with an amount of effort already put in and an expectation of a quick resolution. So where we have that increased complexity, making sure that we're able to handle customers effectively is really, becomes more complicated. We need to make sure that our people are supported in that requirement to meet the urgency and speed that customers expect to be dealt with. And working in the medical insurance sector, there's a real importance to getting to those customers quickly, and then the added complexity makes it really difficult. So making sure that you understand that, rather than and remodel and learn from the changing landscape that we're in, is so important. And like you say, demand spikes aren't just seasonal. It used to be that you could draw quite a nice line across the year of your resource requirements and go, okay, well, here's Christmas and New Year, and here's a bit in summer when there's maybe a little bit less contact, or depending on what your industry is. But there's so much more complexity to it now, and so the constant need to review, replan, reforecast, and rethink is there every day. And so the more you can connect your understanding of resource requirements and support requirements for your people to the people themselves, the better. And I think I sit in quite a unique position where I look after our resource planning, but also do manage operational areas and sort of process standards and things like that allow us to use all of that with that kind of sort of symbiotic nature of being able to learn and develop, improve the processes based on when things go wrong to reduce failure demand. Understand when actually it's not just agents taking their time, it's that more time needs to be taken, and looking at your resource models on that basis so that you can evolve with the needs of an evolving market. It's not easy. I'm not trying to make it sound like I've got all the answers and figured it all out, but we need to acknowledge all of these things in our plans and look at how we can drive efficiencies where efficiencies can be driven, and allow people to focus on customer when people need to focus on customer and not rush.
And what a great answer. I also think it's interesting that you cover both WFM and operations, so you can help both flex and amend based on that demand. But Ben, you mentioned something earlier on, and I know this is very important to Elephants Don't Forget. We are talking about a people equation here, right? We have customers who just want to go through with as minimal effort as possible. They want an efficient service. They do not consider that you might be dealing with an unexpected or high volume of contacts. And then the other part of the equation, of course, is our team members who are struggling to keep up with this demand. So it's very much a people-based challenge, isn't it?
100%, 100%. And I think supporting employees to be empathetic in the interactions that they have with their customers and keep that front of mind is really quite difficult, because when the contact center boards are going red and the call volumes are hitting the high rockets, and I've just put the call down and I'm picking up the next one to a customer, actually getting into that headspace to deal with the customer in an isolated interaction when I've perhaps just had a really difficult conversation previously is hard. And I really don't envy the role of a team leader within a contact center, having to motivate, manage, and support people through that journey, even at the best of times when the demand isn't even high. And then you compound that with high spikes and high demand into the contact center, and you just sort of find yourself in this scenario where it's very difficult for all.
Well, let's have a look at what it feels like inside the operation. I think one of the things that I think is synonymous, and maybe this is what we're looking to try and break here, we're synonymous with being good under pressure. We're good in a crisis. We kind of love the firefighting if we're honest about it. But what are some of the things that what are some of the things we see in the operation as a result of this kind of demand? We've got three up there.
Yeah.
Which ones do you to jump, you recognize straight away and go, oh yeah.
I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say all three. I think that, I think they're almost to some degree in numerical order from my experience. That, if your agents are overloaded, your service breaks down, and your managers see the stress. So to some degree, picking them off in that order is the right way to approach it. One of the things that we've found really effective, and I think we're quite lucky being a global organization that we sort of have some flex in having multiple sites with customer facing resource in, is having that ability to utilize things like call overflows or rerouting of work when a team's under pressure. Being a global organization, we also have sort of localized regional impacts. So we have contact centers out in Cebu who saw some really challenging things with weather. So earthquakes, there was a typhoon, all sorts of things have been going on there. And so being able to reduce the stress there and say, don't worry about it, make sure people are safe, we'll redirect contact to another site temporarily, stops that building stress. If you can alleviate pressure through clever tactical moves in the moment, and where possible, strategically plan for those moves. So plan going into Ramadan, for example, to make sure that where our Cairo employees need additional time for cultural and local reasons, but we also look at how we can support and plan that resource in advance to flex resource between sites to not build that pressure, not overload our agents, and therefore not see those impacts of stresses where people start to get things wrong. And once that happens, you increase your customer contact, but you also increase your challenging customer contact because people are complaining they've not had first contact resolution. And so that builds, and that's where you see things break down when it comes to the service. So one of the things we've utilized Nelly for, and I'm sure Ben's going to talk about Clever Nelly in much more detail throughout, but as a learning tool that helps to embed knowledge, being able to sort of move work between sites is all well and good, but actually what if the people aren't familiar with the work? So Nelly is a really great way for us to be able to push information out, but also validate consistent knowledge and competency across our different sites so that people are prepared to be flexed as resource. Obviously that is not how we think of our people, but when you're looking at it from a high level, we're able to be sensible in the way that we don't overload people through utilizing others, and sort of looking at where the pressure points are for one site and where the availability or capacity might sit elsewhere. So I think it all sits up front with how we think about our people, and our people should be the first thing we think about when we think about how things go right and how things can go wrong, and making sure they're supported and looked after to deliver that good service to our customers.
And this kind of flexing of resources is a really interesting one. I can remember being responsible for an outsource. We had multiple campaigns, and people that had gone through this kind of high demand period actually initially were reluctant to be trained on new clients because they kind of knew that they were going to potentially get hit on a inquiry where they hadn't had exposure to it very often. What I'm talking about though is back in the day when it was either try and take people off the phones to put them in a room to train them, or just give them a handout. Now, Ben, what you guys do and what you must see with your customers that come to talk to you initially, they must have some of those challenges. But what you do is that kind of bit by bit in the moment, testing their knowledge. Is it that a key part of this is getting how we skill people to be as evolved as a technology that supports it?
100%. I mean, your service level is so dependent on the capability of the individuals within the team. So you've got to find ways that enable people in often really quite complex roles, especially if you're servicing across multiple service lines, multiple products, potentially you work in an outsourced environment where actually you're dealing with multiple clients even. Actually having somebody who has a really high level of capability and competence breeds confidence.
Mm.
And if you think around, Caspian mentioned first contact resolution there as something which maybe customers don't always receive. it's not always that the information gets given incorrectly. Sometimes it's that the person on the other end of the phone just didn't deliver it with enough confidence and credibility that left the customer feeling satisfied with the response, and they end up having to call back in. So then,
I just want to check that answer.
yeah, yeah.
Now
Yeah,
let's have a
it's
look
true.
at
It happens.
let's have a look at why this matters. And I think the one that jumps out to me there is pressure and stress. You know, when we go through a spike like this, where we go through high demand, I think the biggest challenge we have is the impact that that has on our people. That they think, do you know what, this, I do not want to go through this again. We do so much, it costs so much, and we do so much work to attract people into the industry. And then if we're not equipping them, that kind of attrition and pressure and stress, and then there was a key word earlier on in one of the things that we're going to talk about is resilience. You know, how do you build resilience in someone? It's through being competent and confident, as you say, Ben, at your job. But as you can see, there are a lot of stats there about why we need to address this kind of key area. Let's move on. Sorry, Ben. So,
No,
okay,
go.
we are now going to get all of you 62 people out there to to do some work. You can't just sit here like we're doing and listen to Caspian and Ben. So please do answer this first poll. When demand spikes in your operation, what's most likely to suffer first? And guys, it'll be interesting to see the answers. Have you got a bet? Which one do you think is going to win?
I think people will be hard pressed to choose between those, if I'm honest. I would love to see the bottom answer. None at all. Everyone handles their peaks well. I mean, we could probably close the session a bit early if that's the case. But
Well,
that would be a nice reassurance.
we should then start asking everyone how they do it.
Well, there we'll change the presenters over. I'll sit back and listen.
So we've made this difficult that you can only choose one. Will you choose service quality, employee well-being or morale, customer satisfaction metrics, compliance or audit outcomes? What's most likely to suffer first for you guys that are watching based on your own experiences? Or none of the above? As Caspian said, we're all right, thanks.
My bet might more be service quality, because I think from service quality as the first element that suffers, then leads on to all of the following.
Yeah,
But anyway, we'll see. We'll see what the crowd says.
it's a good point, isn't it? Because here we go. You were right.
Oh wow, there you go. Put the lottery on.
So 53% said service quality, errors, rework, repeat contacts, closely followed by employee well-being or morale, customer satisfaction metrics. It's very interesting that no one said compliance or audit outcomes. I wonder if that's because that could be considered part of service quality.
It almost one follows the other, doesn't it? So once the service quality suffers, we're then going to pick up on that later in the audit outcomes. But I suppose if we've talked about what hits first, it probably is one and then the other.
Well, thank you for answering that one. And we have another one for you that follows on nicely. What makes it hardest to keep teams performing well during busy periods? So, what are the things that are stopping you? Lack of time for coaching or learning, a skills gap or inconsistent knowledge, limited budget or resources, short staffing, high attrition, over reliance on tech or process fixes, or all of the above. And again, guys, where are you placing your counter on the table for this one?
I think, I'm really hard pressed, but I think it really depends on the type of work. But I think skills gap and inconsistent knowledge is going to be there, and short staffing, high attrition is going to be there, because if you haven't got the people, it's real challenging. If you haven't got the time with the people that you have, then you're going to see those inconsistencies in knowledge. But yeah, it's difficult to choose. So you can see me, I'm just not choosing.
Ben?
all of the above would be mine. I think again, it is hard, but what we definitely know is when the demand goes through the roof, a lot of the kind of core foundational requirements get dropped. So
Yeah.
there isn't as much coaching, there isn't as much one-to-ones, there isn't as much time spent with people. So I, and then you compound it, as you say, Caspian, if you've not got the staffing right and you've not got the workforce management planning there, you've built a rod for your own back. It is inherently going to go wrong.
Again,
Yeah,
thank you all.
exactly.
Thank you all for answering. This one is a bit more of an even split.
Spread, yeah.
All of the
But
above
Ben, I
wins,
really
though.
think you should be playing the lottery. Yeah.
All of the above wins with 35%, closely followed by short staffing, high attrition, skills gap, inconsistent knowledge, lack of time for coaching or learning, and then limited budget or resources. And I think the fact that all of the above wins there, it just gives you an idea of the breadth of the problem that people are dealing with. You know, we made a point right at the start that this is no longer kind of seasonal. This is more business as usual for many contact centers. Okay, so let's talk about what causes mistakes and rework to spike when volumes surge. Caspian, what's been your experience here?
I think it is that, pressure on people with the lack of support. So I think, Ben mentioned it a minute ago that when we do see those surges in contact, when we are busy, things that we would otherwise consider very important drop off. So support and training, refresher training for people to make sure that they are still up to date with their knowledge, time to read communications or even know what the latest changes are. Those things all go down. And I suppose when you're, outside of your operation, there will still be strategic and project and regulatory changes happening that can't slow down even if we're busy. So trying to keep your people supported is really difficult. And I think that, that then creates that risk of incorrect outcome mistakes because people don't have the knowledge and they're under too much pressure to have time to think. And the knock-on effects of that, are massive. So, your contact volumes will only continue to go up if you're not getting it right. And then you're both in a backlog and you're not giving the right outcomes. And then you'll see, increased complaints, lack of engagement from people because they don't feel like they're validated in doing the right thing, but they don't feel supported in being able to do the right thing. So that's where you see your attrition and difficulty to attract people into roles, and then inability to train and support those people learning those roles. So you end up with high turnover and experienced staff base and potentially not enough resource if you can't keep people in the door long enough. So the phrase perfect storm there, I think, is is about right. But I think, that cognitive overload, it just comes from that pressure and the inability to find ways to alleviate pressure from people, which when you're in the middle of it is quite often very difficult to think, how do we get out of this? And thinking about your structure and how your customer journeys are structured and how you're resourced across your operation is really important. Goes without saying, but one thing that I think I mentioned when we were talking before was that we made a sort of fairly major change to our complaint structure a few years ago, where we were seeing, when things go wrong, we're relying on the people in the front line to try and understand, investigate and resolve your complaints, and then be ready for the next call as well at the same time. It just doesn't work. We then get the complaint outcomes wrong and you end up in trouble with the regulator. And so we made a decision to split out part of our operation and focus on like a frontline complaints team that sat behind the front line. And so when a complaint call is received, that gets live transferred straight into a complaint handler who's then going to try and resolve that, freeing up your front line and actually making your complaint calls arguably your easiest calls for your frontline agents, where they may have been a huge driver of lack of engagement, frustration and feeling of helplessness. So making that change, it took a lot of convincing to sort of take all of the complaint work out of the front line of our sort of global operating model, because people said, well, they could still do the easy ones, but it's like, well, define easy.
Yeah.
So I basically was quite hard-lined in saying, let's take it all out and see how it goes. You can always move some back as people become more comfortable, but what that has done is it's reduced some of the handling times, but also made some of the handling times a bit more consistent, where there'll be huge spikes in handling time for complaint calls and all of those sorts of things. And it's also massively improved our complaint resolution time, where we were sitting close to the regulatory timelines, if I'm being honest, where you're closer to your 6 to 8 weeks period. And now the average closure time for a complaint is 5 days, because we've got people focused on complaints, speaking to the customer immediately. And often, if you just acknowledge, understand, apologize, and find a solution, because your experienced staff are doing this versus your newest staff, the customer's happy with the closure and able to resolve things quicker, which means we can close more complaints and then we get less complaints because we're making less mistakes. So it's been a really beneficial thing to do, to take some of that cognitive load off of our very front line, who we need to be constantly available, and they can't be constantly available if they're investigating complex complaints and complex situations.
Sorry, Ben, go on.
Caspian, I think it's such a good play that you've made there, because I think even taking it out of your environment and just into the wider contact center industry, so many of us have rightly automated a lot of the more simple activities and utilizing things like chatbots, where the easier activities get taken away from the agent. It's great for the customer experience, they get it slicker, it's great from an efficiencies perspective, but actually what you're stacking up is proportionately harder work for the agent. So being able to take something out of that sort of frontline customer service team and put it into a specialist area not only delivers a better experience for your customer, but also your people are feeling the benefit of that, because, as you say, taking a complaints call on the front line is actually one of the easier activities that they've now got to take. And I know, Martin, in the previous conversations, you sort of spoke about, I can't remember what it, change of address, was it? That you used to really enjoy?
This is one I can get very passionate about. There is a group think at play, if you like, that we are hearing all the time, that we're taking away transactional, and our frontline advisors, agents, call them what you will be left with the more complex, the more emotive, the more urgent, and there'll be problem solvers and the case handlers, and it will be great for them. We're all ex-agents. If you'd have said to me that's what you're going to be dealing with day in, day out, all the time, I wouldn't have been happy about that. I love the change of address. And the reason being is it gives you that cognitive break. You are still present, you're still there with the customer, but you're going through something you've done thousands of times, rather than nothing else changing, but we're dealing with more complex. And what I love about what you've done, Caspian, is it's positively disruptive, because I think most people would say, well, we're just going to skill everyone up so that they can handle every inquiry from start to finish. It's a one touch point, done, rather than looking at using your data to say, what are the types of contacts we're getting, what's causing our bottlenecks, our stress, that cognitive load, where are we getting the most errors, where are we getting the most repeat contacts, and going, is there a way that we can filter them and give them to a better equipped team that are going to get more time, they're going to be more competent, they'll produce less errors, and it still doesn't negatively impact the customer experience. I think that's a key takeaway for everyone watching, to what you've done to look at your customer flow, your data of outcomes or nature of the queries, and how your teams are set up, and map your journey that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there's a few things, some of which we anticipated and some of which we didn't, but, being able to take what the most feared call out of the front line is brilliant. It actually then created development opportunities for people who then go, well, actually, I'm interested to know what happens next with the complaint. So actually you keep your people in your overall contact center, but they move internally into that development. And also from a customer perspective, the biggest thing I was worried about was creating a handover where customers obviously don't want to be handed from pillar to post. But actually, when someone's complaining, going, oh, let me get someone more senior on the line for you right now, actually creates a really good customer experience because that customer immediately feels listened to. So some of that stuff was predicted and some of it was not. But yeah, benefits of sort of rethinking the model and challenging the way that we sort of often like to do things, which is just add more skill into your front line.
Thank you as well for everyone that is dropping comments in the chat. There is also the option to ask questions, and we will pick them up at the end. So please do keep going. Thank you, everyone. So our next point is, how can leaders protect both performance and people under pressure? And this is the key challenge, really. This is the nub of it, isn't it? So I think we could all agree that what agents need during spikes is that reduced cognitive friction. They need real-time knowledge and support. Ideally, you want to simplify process steps. Caspian, as you cover both operations and WFM, I'm sure you can relate to this one about stabilizing WFM and removing that kind of avoidable variance. And one that I think we can all agree is really important. It's that kind of emotional support for agents. I think even if you were doing a task that you do every day, Ben, if you were tying your shoelaces and I was stood behind you going, "Come on, hurry up. We've got to get in the car." You know, you might still tie your shoelaces in exactly the same time, but you wouldn't be skipping into the car all happy. You'd be flustered. You'd probably be angry at me. And it, to me, though, you know, this is a whole area of the psychology of leadership. Is what do you see your role as? What are you doing? How do you bring the best out of people? How do you support them? Especially if they're dealing with either queries that they're not used to or areas that are more complex. How your manager shows up has such a huge impact on the outcome. I'm assuming you would be fine in that scenario, though, Ben.
Well, yeah, I might miss the double knot, but yes. No, I think when you're in that situation, the requirement and the need for your people to just be operating on their A game is so high, and you can't get to at Elephant's Day, we know that people can't remember all of the information that you provide them through training, through coaching, and you find these problems where people just get faced in a situation where they don't know exactly how to operate. And if you don't have the skill and the capability within the team, you you can't get any further. You just cannot resolve the query for the customer, and you just find this. It just situation implodes on the business where people are making all of these mistakes. I think it's on the bottom right: high complexity interaction, increased error risk. But actually, high demand increases the error risk if you don't have capability within the team, and you've got to forward plan not only your resource, but how do you make sure you have A-star colleagues and the front line ready for when the inevitable happens. And I think that for me is just so key, because if we just think that we can train somebody, put them into their role, kind of wish them luck, we're going to find it really difficult when demand spikes. So it all goes back to me for being to arm your people, equip your people, help them as much as you can, not only during a spike, but throughout their whole tenure with you as an organization. And if you do that well, you are setting yourself up, you're reducing a lot of the risk that you're definitely going to get faced with when demand comes into the center.
Mm. And this question is, how do you protect both performance and people under pressure? And the two are interlinked. Now, Caspian, I'm thinking about your world where customers might be talking about things that are both emotive and urgent and complex, and you know, performance is measured by the best next action for them, but that has a huge human element. What are some of the things that you've done to kind of look after both of these two areas, balancing them both?
Yeah, I mean it's a huge challenge, isn't it? And I suppose a lot of it comes down to how you're structured, but also your culture as a business. We really position and, recruit people and support people in thinking about that side of things. This may be a very emotional situation for the customer that you're talking to. It may be emotionally triggering for you as an individual. So making sure that your culture, but also your recruitment, your training, and your onboarding support for your staff sort of supports that. So making sure you get the right people who really do care. We can teach people processes, much harder to teach people empathy. And so creating a contact center of staff that really do care about doing the right thing for customers, and listening and hearing what that customer may be experiencing, and building that into the next step, the right answer in the process, so that it's not rigid and transactional, it's supportive. And then in turn, you've got to offer them the same support. So if someone's had a really difficult call, making sure they know that it's fine, normal, acceptable, and even expected, they might reach out to need to talk to someone briefly after that, making sure you've got the right tools in place. And also making sure that, when things are really busy, but there's transparency and sort of, I suppose, empathy in your leadership, and in the way that you sort of bring people along in whatever recovery or, peak management that you might have to do, rather than just focusing on the numbers. It's for people who you're bringing along that journey with you, being transparent. We didn't expect to be this busy today. But we're all in this together type thing. Or if you're supporting between the sites, being able to be like, we're stepping up to support our colleagues in Cairo today, so that it has a human and emotional attachment to it, rather than it just being like, this statistic has gone out of our service level agreement, so you need to be motivated by that to do it better. It doesn't work. If you're in the front line of a contact center, some people will care about that, but the majority, that's just a number, because it is just a number, right? There's a lot of weight attached to those numbers, but you really need to connect your people to the human element of it. There are customers who really might need something very important right now. We need to make sure we get there to them. So it's about how you communicate it. There's a lot more that goes into it, which I think, some of which, much of which, in fact, Ben has covered around that, sort of making sure you've got the right sort of tools and support and things for your people, and utilizing tech. I think there's a stat on the last slide about, customers largely feel that tech or AI supports businesses, not customers. Well, yeah, make sure I believe that's true as well. Make sure you point your AI and your tech at your people, so that they can better support your customers, rather than forcing your customers, to only interact with AI. If you've got AI supported agents who have the answers quicker and can do things more swiftly and without so much stress or thought, they can focus their thought on the customer and do things more easily, and the customer's not going to feel like there's a barrier between them and their product, or them and their service.
I love that. And what I was hearing loud and clear there was, acknowledgement, recognition, clear communication, and being transparent. And the one that I absolutely love is the human element, the connection, that we're in this together. We are supporting both customers, but your teammates over here, and my role is now to support you. That really is the power of culture. Let's have a look at this now. What does resilience look like in a modern, high volume contact center? And this is really good timing. I just finished some research where spoke to 540 agents, and the number one thing that they asked for was training on resilience. And you can see here some other stats. Now, Ben, what does resilience mean for you?
I think it's continuing to perform at the levels that you would perform when not under high pressure.
Yeah, I love that. And right up your street, I don't think you can be resilient unless you are competent and confident.
I think you start going into a spin, and I think you start really feeling all of the pressure, all of the problems that we've alluded to earlier in the concept, particularly relating to the individuals, so like their well-being, their stress. Stress is not necessarily a negative thing, but strain
Mm,
is really bad. So
mm.
and I don't think you can be resilient under strain. So
How much of this do you think, one of the things there is that I'm really interested in your thoughts on, is the extent to which you have predictable performance. We've said that perhaps spikes aren't as seasonal as they used to, and they may still be in some verticals, but nonetheless, you know they're coming. Even to what extent do we need to draw that into our forward planning? Caspian, how much, bearing in mind you look over operations and WFM, what are some of the things you're doing there?
I think, we spoke about, there's more to it than seasonality these days, but actually predicting seasonality and people's needs and expectations is really important. So making sure your plan is one that through which you engage with your people. There's and going back to sort of the multi-site sort of element of it, we have sort of typical seasonality that affects different regions at different times. So we do have that opportunity to support each other in a more structured way than just jumping in when things go through the roof in terms of volume. So being able to reach out to people and find out what times of the year are important to them, understanding what time people need off with family at Christmas, what time people need off at Ramadan, people in the Hong Kong team need off for Chinese New Year. All of those sorts of things are really important to people. And again, that sort of banding together of this is how we'll do this through one site supporting another and people understanding each other's needs. It helps to bring together a multicultural global operation in understanding that there are different times of the year that are important to different people and allowing you to be sort of prepared throughout the year in a way that reduces those impacts, taking weight on the people who also have a lot of importance associated with that time. So broadly speaking, I guess, it's about how considered your plan is about your people, and then how engaged your people are in your plan. Even if it's like offering options rather than giving free rein, we can continually sort of develop and enhance the way that we plan by listening to our people, engaging with our people, and thinking about those sort of cultural touch points and what's important to them, as well as the timings that are important to our customers.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Just before we jump into this question, resilience, I think, comes from that competency and confidence, but also your experience. Now, if your experience as a new person into our industry is you're thrown in the deep end and you survive, that doesn't necessarily make you more resilient. Because I think we've all been in those situations, right, where what are the first things? I like to use the analogy of your contact center is a hot air balloon. And sometimes when the altitude is dropping, what gets thrown out the basket? It's coaching, it's one-to-ones, it's quality. All of those things getting thrown out means that you're not building on people's resilience for the next time they have to deal with it because they've missed some key coaching. To what extent do you think, because it is a challenge, how do you protect those coaching and development hours but still want to meet that high demand? And Ben, this must be a challenge. Oh, sorry, Caspian, go on.
Sorry, absolutely jumping in there ahead. Ben, sorry.
I think you've got to find time-effective ways to do it. So the hour-long, 30-minute coaching interactions may not be able to be there, but there's certainly other ways that you can continue to coach and continue to develop people, particularly when you look to technology. In a much more time-light way, which means that you don't lose coaching, you just do it in a more efficient way. And that's something that we'd definitely allude to sort of further down in the session. But don't kill it is the only thing that I would advise, because as soon as you take it out, for me, going back to the resilience point as well, it's how does your manager enable that individual to have a high level of resilience as well? It isn't just something that is personal. It can be fostered, it can be supported, and that's something that you need to consider how you maintain that over the course of the year, to be ready for the increased demand whenever that may come.
And Caspian?
Yeah, I mean, I cut you off to answer the question almost exactly the same way, which is a bit silly, wasn't it? But yeah, I think it's exactly that, making sure that you build time for support, coaching, one-to-ones, very structured conversations that help keep our people supported into your plans. And then when things get difficult, you can reduce or reprioritize, but don't remove, because it's very hard to put it back in. And, arguably, you never will if you take it out and you're performing much better, from an operational standpoint, it's very unlikely them to go, oh, should we put all of that nice stuff back into the plan again or back into the model again? So then you have people who just feel less and less and less and less and less supported over time. And to Ben's thing about, sort of that being the first thing to go, it is. I mean, I've seen it happen before. I've made the decision before and then regretted it massively. And I think the point around people, you don't build resilience through surviving, you just survive, right? So you're likely to become less and less resilient each time that you manage to just about get through the month and get through the week and get through the day. So we're chipping away at our people's resilience and then being like, oh look, they're managing fine without the support. No, they're not managing fine, or arguably unlikely to be managing fine. Keeping that support there, even if it's just breathing space, opportunity to vent, opportunity to ask questions, or just FaceTime with a manager or someone else, is so important. But when you take that out, you really do jeopardize your people and therefore your operation.
I think, as well as coaching and learning being missed, one of the things that, Ben, you mentioned is the importance of leadership, kind of recognizing and telling people they've done a good job. Some of those things can be missed. And if you're sat there dealing with multiple queries, more than you usually deal with, and you get to the end of the day and you go, and that hasn't been recognized, that has a real negative impact. One of the things I would always tell my team leaders is, during these periods of busyness, you still have to spot the good and you have to go over the top and recognize it more, because people will feel like they're not necessarily doing a good job, but they really are. Now, how can continual learning and multi-skilling help teams stay sharp and flexible? Ben, this must be one that potential customers bring to you quite often.
Yeah, all the time. I think everybody does a great job of onboarding employees and training them in the first instance. It's that keeping people remaining sharp, which is often one of the challenges that they see. And to Caspian's point, that ability to sort of place work within other parts of the team at points in need. So we've beaten this drum the whole session, to be perfectly honest. But the capability and the competence of the people, maintaining that on an ongoing basis is just critical. And when it starts to slip off, that's when, and the demand starts to spike, that's when it really starts to go wrong. So I think the stat there is something I alluded to earlier. We know that on average, an employee remembers just half of the information that they've gone through when they've been trained it in the first instance. And what's really difficult is actually working out where that individual's personal gaps are. You probably see it through quality assurance data, you probably see it through complaints data, all of those kind of lagging indicators of people having knowledge gaps or making mistakes. But actually identifying it in the first instance before things goes wrong is really quite difficult. So being able to understand and know at an individual employee level, where are their weaknesses, where are their areas and opportunities to improve, having visibility of that just is massively helpful to supporting them to be able to be more capable. I mean, you get us on our hobby horse if you're not careful when we go to this one. So I'll pass it over to Caspian.
No, I think that I'm a big fan of Clever Nelly as a tool and of the work I've done with Elephants Don't Forget. So I think there is a real, strong point here, and we don't want this to become an advert. So I'll keep it brief as well. But yeah, in just having dynamic learning tools and dynamic learning plans that mean that we support our people with capability and don't drop training the moment that we get busy. And that continual learning, everyone should be continually learning, or at least being reminded about the things we're expected of them. And so we used to do sort of old-fashioned refresher training and things like that, and taking everyone out of the contact center to go through and train them on a general topic that is in no way tailored to specifically their individual learning needs. It's based on general learning needs. That time is worse spent, larger quantities of time that are ineffective and impersonal to people. So being able to use a tool like Nelly or any other tool that does similar things to support people, remind people, and then also pick up on things that people maybe don't know so much and offer personalized support, and also to be able to have those conversations with people based on a measured knowledge gap rather than waiting until someone does something wrong for a customer, and then it becomes a much different conversation when you're picking up from a quality assurance check or something like that, where they've actually done the wrong thing, and we have to then feedback and remediate. Learning in advance what people don't know and fixing those gaps is a much better way to make sure people are capable, and capability mattering. We've been talking about this the whole time, but it's so important that your staff are confident and competent.
And then when you think about it, there aren't many industries like ours that capture as much data as we do. And during these periods of high demand, that is telling you something. And you can see that. You mentioned Ben and Caspian, that you'll be able to see in a variety of areas, whether it's QA, whether it is in errors, where are the knowledge gaps, and then how is that fed into both group and individual tailored training is really important. That these kind of demands in performance is just giving us more data.
It is, and mine, I know something you're really keen on is, and from your time in leading contact centers, almost doing that wash up at the
Mm.
end of a demand spike to look at, okay, well, what actually happened? What went wrong? What can we learn from this? Let's not just kind of get on with the rest of our year and feel a little bit like we dodged a bullet that time around. Actually, how can we learn from this to make improvements in the future? Which I think is critical to making sure that you are improving and continually improving for the next one that's inevitable to hit you at some point.
No, thank you very much, because that I can't take credit for it. It's from Flawless Execution is a group of ex-fighter pilots, US fighter pilots, and there was a few messages, but one of the key ones that I took away is, even if their flights were cursory, standard, the importance of a debrief helped them become excellent at what they do. And I think one of the things in our industry, we're all dopamine addicts. We love the next thing. We love the crisis. We love dealing with the demand, and then we exhale, get into BAU, and we never bring everyone together. All of the support functions, bring representatives from advisors together, your team leaders, look at, go through the stats, but say, how was it? What what did we do well that we need to continue? Do that start, stop, continue. The concept of a debrief continual improvement is really important, but you have to be disciplined to get everyone to stop. It's like when a horse bolts, technically they're blind. You have to kind of go, hello, wait, we need to talk about what's just happened.
100%. And when we speak with our customers, we often hear them. There's things that the organization can put processes and systems and solutions in place, and you can kind of fix those elements, not simply, but they are in the control of a handful of people.
Mm.
When you start to then look at the people element, you open a huge can of worms, because if they haven't got that capability and they haven't got the confidence to operate in the ways that you need them to, you got to fix a 100, 500, 5,000, let's call it, problems, rather than some of those more kind of strategic solutions. So I think when we get into the crux of why did it go wrong, how can you fix it, don't just look at the systems and the processes, look at your people. How can you
Mm.
enable and support your people to do things better when the next spike comes? That's the critical component for me.
Well, why don't you tell us just how Clever Nelly can help in this situation? And we're lucky to have Caspian as a user doing this right now and seeing the benefits. But Ben, take us through how Clever Nelly actually works.
Well, fundamentally, as an organization, we exist because employees, as I said previously, can't retain all of the information that you need them to know to do their job brilliantly. It's just human nature. I've only got so much information that can sit in my brain. And when you've got competing priorities, it's really hard to know exactly what I should remember, um, and be able to apply that in my day to day. So we're the home of a piece of technology which is called Clevernelli, and ultimately what Clevernelli does is it increases the knowledge and it increases the competence of an individual, and that leads to them operating in a better way, making fewer mistakes, delivering better outcomes for customers, working in a more efficient way, which ultimately benefits everybody. It benefits the customer, it benefits the employee, it reduces some of the strain and stress that they're under because they're just a little bit better at their job. So I appreciate we haven't got a huge amount of time, but ultimately what we do is we take training resources, we continually reinforce those. It takes a minute of somebody's time per day, and we very quickly work out where their strengths and where their weaknesses are and fix the gaps. That improves their competence, and then ultimately that leads to better performance. So when you do get those demand spikes, you've got a more well-equipped workforce to deal with them and not go through that kind of cycle of pain that was on one of the previous slides. Higher volume, more errors, more repeat contacts. Actually, if you could just have the higher volume is always going to come. But if you can have more competent and capable people, you're going to see less mistakes, you're going to see less repeat contacts, and then that ultimately starts to the contact center is just a market that we operate really effectively in, because
Mm.
if you sit back and think about it, if you had a more knowledgeable employee who was more confident in their role, are they going to deliver a better job? And it's kind of hard to argue that they wouldn't. It's just not everybody is looking at learning and the development of people in the way that we do, which is it just got to be always on.
Mm.
Really light touch, but always on. Always support people. We all should be learning all of the time, and that just only helps us operate a little bit better every day.
There was a phrase on the employee experience using Clevernelli that I absolutely love, and that's continuous reinforcement. And Caspian, have you seen the benefits of that? How has that manifested itself in reality?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have run Clevernelli within our customer service global operation and some of our other teams, including our claims functions, for coming up to a little under 2 years. And we've got sort of specific metrics we had in mind, but we wanted to address, and we've seen successes there. For example, things like ability to recognize complaints, using Nelly to push examples of complaints out and test people's ability to recognize what is and isn't a complaint, was a really valuable way to understand our people's knowledge, and then where we needed to do sort of more targeted coaching and training, but ultimately see people learn from the reinforcement. But actually competency naturally just took an upwards curve there. You could measure it in Nelly, and then we could see it in our QA. It feels like, we didn't have to go in and take each person back and go, you've just got this wrong, here's how you do it right. But actually we could use the tool to just change some of those bits of understanding and really address something that could have been a huge issue for us. And there's many other things we've used Nelly for. I'm just conscious of time, but
Yeah,
yeah, we're able to sort of use and tailor the questions and the set of content that we have in Nelly to address other trends as they come up, or just things we think, well, this is actually really important to us. Let's make sure that all of our people really know this. For example, vulnerable customer, we're able to go, we think our people know it. Let's see if they know it. And yeah, the results were there. There's really strong levels of confidence there, but there was a few pockets of sort of knowledge gap, and some of those have been fixed through Nelly, some of those have been fixed externally, but we wouldn't have had that information. There was no way to know outside of people getting it wrong and it being picked up through compliance.
I love that. Well, let's have a look at what practical steps we can take right now to prepare for the next peak. So, we are recommending 5 things to do before the next surge to spot weaknesses before peaks hit, and perhaps that's through a debrief, to fix the repeat contacts you're accidentally creating. I'm going to ask you guys about that. Make training flexible and continuous. Support advisors in real time. And one that I absolutely love, communicate early, clearly, and often. Which one jumps out to you there, Caspian?
Trying not to give cop-out answers to all of these and just say everything. I really think the communication is actually the key, and I think that's one that's definitely important to you. And I think it's communication within your operation to make sure people understand, the likely impact of potentially a peak or a surge on them, and being able to understand their needs going into it, not after the fact. Communication with other parts of your business to make sure people understand that you might be in a difficult situation within your contact center, so that they're not throwing unnecessary work in and creating more problems for you or setting the wrong expectations. And communication with stakeholders, and where possible, communication with customers, be that through things like IVRs or digital channels, to set expectations more realistically. You're then going to have less frustrated customers, or customers who might go, you know what, this isn't urgent, I need you later, I'll call another time. So you can control a lot of it through communication, so long as you get it right and do it in the right way. So yeah, I think for me that jumps out first, but it's not to say that the rest of them aren't massively important as well.
Now I'm conscious of everyone's time, so I want to jump to the fact that time's gone so quickly. Two great panelists, Caspian and Ben. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for watching. But let's jump to, no doubt you will want to carry on this conversation. You can see how many great companies, including Bupa, work with Clever Nelly. Please do indicate now if you want to see Clever Nelly in action, and subscribe to our readership base. You can choose both in this one. We would love to carry on the conversation with you. There is so much you can do by using Clever Nelly, or even just talking to everyone at Elephants Don't Forget. It's been fascinating to pick their brains, that kind of cumulative knowledge based on all of their customers and you guys are happy to share. Ben, I'm not talking for you, am I?
No, I can't talk for myself because I'm on mute. No. No, it's brilliant. It's we'd love the opportunity to bring it to life, but I just want to say thank you, Martin. Thank you, Caspian. What a fantastic conversation.
No,
Yeah,
well,
thank you both.
you're welcome.
Thanks
We, we
everyone who
could we
joined.
could have carried on for about 3 hours, I
I
think.
know, I know, I know. No, it's just such a brilliant topic to talk around, because you can do so much on your systems, you can do so much on your processes, but just don't neglect the people element, because it's the people who are the powerhouse contact center.
Thank you, Caspian. Thank you, Ben. Thanks to everyone that joined us for this hour. Please do carry on the conversation. Get in touch with Elephants Don't Forget, and subscribe to the readership base. But to everyone that's got involved, thank you for all the chat as well. It's been brilliant. Have a lovely rest of the day.
Thank you all.
Thanks everyone.